Tuesday evening, everybody. Welcome into the Porch. It is a Volquest baseball podcast. I am Eric Kane. We'll have VFL former Tennessee first baseman Luke Lipsius on in just a couple of minutes to help preview and help me talk about the show, previewing the SEC tournament because it is that time of the year. The regular season has come and gone, and Tennessee is now heading to postseason play. But before you can get into hosting a regional, you have got to take on the meaningless SEC tournament. And yes, I said it's meaningless, and I'll get to that here in a moment. But first, I want to tell you about our friends. That is over at Spivey King and Spivey LLP. You got a problem, let them find a solution for you. That's T&T Lawyers. They specialize in DUI, homicide, assault, car wrecks, personal injuries, all that and more. If you got a problem, they can find a solution for you. You can pick up the phone today, and you get a free consultation by calling the phone number 423-245-4185, or you can go visit them online at Spivey King and Spivey LLP.com. Spivey King and Spivey LLP, proud presenting sponsors of the Porch here for this baseball season. All right, so Tennessee wins the regular season. They leave the regular season as co-champions of the Southeastern Conference. Yes, I know there were some questions on the board saying, why am I continuing to refer to them as co-champions? Well, the simple answer to that is because they are co-champions. Kentucky still exists. Tennessee does win the SEC, the tiebreaker, because Tennessee won on the road in Lexington earlier this year. So the tiebreaker only comes into play for seeding in the SEC tournament. Whether right, wrong, and different, whatever the case is, you have co-champions, just like you have co-champions in basketball. Just like years ago there were co-champions for divisional play in college football in the SEC. Co-champions, but still, it's your name and your year still goes on the banner. Okay, nothing changes in that regard. You're still considered SEC champions, and it's quite an accomplishment. Quite an accomplishment. First time since 2022. Of course, Tennessee had that record year, winning the Southeastern Conference, winning the East, being the number one overall seed, winning the SEC tournament, and all that. So, congratulations to Tennessee first and foremost, winning the SEC winning the SEC regular season. Sharing it with Kentucky as co-champs, identical records of 22-8, much better than what I was about to say, 22-18. It's just been a fun year. It's been a really, really cool year to see how this team has evolved and team has gotten better, and this lineup being one of the best in baseball, and obviously watching Christian Moore, who just continues to make history. More on him in a moment, how he was snubbed of SEC Player of the Year. It's been a blast. It's been really, really fun, and I'll talk about this here in a moment with Luke, but my lingering question all season long was, does this team have enough pitching? Does this team have enough pitching? Man, I feel better now than I ever have all year long, because I've seen Kirby Cannell and Aaron Combs come alive. And sure, Kirby throws strikes, and a lot of times you're going to get hit. Cost of doing business when you throw nothing but strikes. That's what Kirby does. But what he's given this bullpen has been massive this year. And Aaron Combs has emerged as a lockdown guy in the back of the pen. And of course, we know about Nate Snead. We know about A.J. Causey. And at times, it's been really great to see Marcus Phillips take a step and Andrew Binkie take a step and Dylan Loy. And I'm intrigued to see how much we see those guys this week down here in Hoover. So it's been fun. It's been a blast. But I feel better now about this Tennessee pitching depth than I ever had this year. Will it be enough? I don't know. We'll see. But I feel better now about it than I have, quite frankly. So I'm excited to see Tennessee in the SEC tournament. They'll play that before going into regional play, of course. You will have the national revealing of the national seeds. That'll be around lunchtime on Memorial Day Monday. It's a work day for me, so we'll have coverage of that. But according to the latest Field of 64 projections per D1 Baseball, this came out on Monday, Tennessee is still considered by them as the number 2 overall seed. Actually, they were number 3, I think, the week before. Kentucky is still at number 1. Tennessee considered the number 2 national seed, hosting a regional that consists of 2-seeded UConn, 3-seeded Georgia Tech, and 4-seeded Fairfield. So interesting to see if any of that actually holds up. If you look over at Baseball America, Tennessee is actually considered the number 1 overall seed right now. If I'm a Tennessee fan, I want to stay away. That's just me. You can say what you want about superstitions, but the fact of the matter is it's been over 20 years, 24 years, I think, whatever it is, since the number 1 overall seed has won the College World Series. So, I would rather not be the number 1 seed if I'm a Tennessee fan, but that is just me. It doesn't matter. You're still going to be set up and be hosting all the way up to Omaha if you're blessed to make it that far. So we'll keep tabs on that. That's what the latest field of 64 projections look like from D1 Baseball and Baseball America. Of course, the All-SEC teams came out earlier this week. Christian Moore, shocker, right? Dylan Dreiling named to the first team. Kavaris Tears, Blake Burke named to the second team and the all-defensive team. So tip of the cap to both those two guys because they have worked their hind ends off to get better at their respective positions, first base and outfield. And KT as well, playing some center field this year too. Couldn't be happy for those two. Dean Curley named to the all-freshman team, and Drew Beam named the Scholar Athlete of the Year. Luke Lipsius here in a moment will say he didn't know Drew was smart. All jokes aside, congratulations to Drew Beam for sure. Charlie Condon, SEC Player of the Year. Okay, I mean, it's hard to be upset about that. It is hard to poke holes through that because why? Well, Charlie Condon's going to be the National Player of the Year. Okay, he's going to be the National Player of the Year. So it's going to look funky if Charlie Condon is the National Player of the Year, but he wasn't the SEC Player of the Year. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know who votes on this. They don't ask me. They should. People should ask my opinion on everything, right? I'm just kidding. I got a lot of stupid takes out there too. But I don't know who votes on All SEC, but I would imagine the basis, the emphasis of the award, the highest weighted part of the award would be criteria on what you did in the 30 league games, right? I mean, it's SEC Player of the Year. What did you do in your 30 SEC games? That's what I would base the majority of who my vote is going to be on for first team, second team, defensive team, Player of the Year, all that type of stuff. Okay. Who was the best in the SEC? Charlie Condon was really good. And he's deserving of being the SEC Player of the Year. He's deserving. So is Jack Caglione. They're both deserving. But it's just been those two guys talking the entire time. It's just been those two guys in the conversation for SEC Player of the Year. And Christian Moore was nowhere to be found. But all he did, lunch pail, bucket, lunch pail, bucket. He just went to work. And the Triple Crown Award winner for SEC games in the 30 games goes to Christian Moore. Christian Moore led the Southeastern Conference with a .429 batting average, 20 home runs, and 41 RBI in the 30 games. Now, Charlie Condon did tie Moore with 41 runs driven in inside league play, but it still counts as a Triple Crown in my book because Moore led the league in average and led the league in home runs in the 30 games. He was phenomenal. And I know there's more stats outside of batting average and home runs and RBI, but runs scored, extra base hits, slugging percentage, OBP, on-base plus slugging percentage, on-base percentage. I mean, Moore's up there. Second to Condon, or if not leading in the majority of the offensive stats inside conference play. So it is of my opinion that Christian Moore got snubbed. Again, I'm not going to sit here and be frustrated and be mad and be irritated. I know Tennessee fans have every right to, and that's fine. But, I mean, real recognizes real. Charlie Condon's a good player, and he deserves it. But that doesn't mean Christian Moore doesn't deserve it. And that doesn't mean that I think Christian Moore got snubbed with the award, because I do. Christian Moore should be the SEC Player of the Year. That's just my opinion. Also, it's tough with A.J. Causey because he had 10 wins in the league this year, or 10 wins overall, right? But he was nominated as a reliever. Most of the times those relievers are going to be looking at saves and ERAs and all that. So it was kind of a tough spot for A.J. Causey, but he's had a fantastic year. I think Nate Snead deserved to be in the running as well, to be all conference. I think Aaron Combs here lately, and he's a long shot, but I think even Aaron Combs deserves some praise here lately in terms of being an all SEC relief pitcher. But none of those guys were. Billy Amick is the one that comes to mind in terms of being a snub. And it's because, again, Charlie Condon was awarded all conference at third base. He's played first base. He's played third base. He's played corner outfield. I mean, he's done a little bit of everything. Now, he's played more third base, but because he was nominated as a third baseman, that slides LSU's Tommy White down to the second team, and then Billy Amick is nowhere to be found, and that's just kind of nature of doing business. So, anyway, good showing for Tennessee on the All SEC teams. Congratulations to those guys, and I'm excited to watch Dylan Dreiling, SEMO first teamers, Burke and KT second teamers, and all defensive team. Drew Beam, Scholar Athlete of the Year, and of course Dean Curley, all freshman team. Looking forward to watching those guys compete, not only in the SEC tournament, but also in postseason baseball, all over the next couple of weeks. Looking forward to that. Okay, on into the SEC tournament. I'm gonna be a little brief here because we need to get to Luke. We talked to Luke about a lot of things, and he's really, really good as always. We talk about the SEC tournament, the mindset going in there, the double bag at first base that we're gonna see in the SEC tournament. It's just a lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff that we talked to Luke about here in a moment. So we'll get to that, but. Full disclosure, I'm recording this because I need to get it out there because there's not a whole lot of shelf life this week for this podcast. I am recording this before Vanderbilt and Florida even play. So I don't know the opponent for Tennessee on Wednesday, but it's going to be around 5:30, probably a little bit later. Around 5:30 first pitch Eastern time. And I was told when I was over there doing the Tony Vitello media the other day, when I was having an off-the-record conversation with someone that I'm not going to name, I was told that depending on who wins, Nate Snead might start Wednesday's game. So I think that's important to remember. And if you go back and you think about what Nate Snead did against Vanderbilt, wouldn't shock me if that's the game. If Vanderbilt wins, then it's going to be Nate Snead. I'll know later tonight, and I'll get it out there for you guys to see. I'll get confirmation on who's going to be the starting pitcher once that game is over. But would not shock me whatsoever if it's going to be Nate Snead that starts Wednesday's game. A.J. Russell will pitch likely on Wednesday in the middle innings. How many innings is that going to be? What's his pitch count going to be? I don't know, but was told that A.J. Russell likely on Wednesday out of the bullpen to pitch an inning or two in the middle frames. So that's what you have to look forward to. And then once you get past Wednesday, which is going to be a bullpen game, guys, think about it. This Wednesday game is really just a Tuesday midweek. It is what it is, right? You have bigger fish to fry than trying to win an SEC tournament. Not that you're not trying to win, and we'll talk about this with Luke here in a moment. Not that you're not trying to win, but these games for Tennessee specifically, because Tennessee's not on the bubble, because Tennessee's not playing for anything, these games mean nothing for Tennessee, okay? The regional games next week mean everything. And if you're blessed to get to the Supers the following weekend, they mean everything. And if you're blessed to get to Omaha, those mean everything. These don't mean a lick for Tennessee this week. So it's about getting your guys work, making sure your pitchers are lined up as much as possible to getting your normal workload. If a certain pitcher doesn't get in, they'll throw bullpens to make up for it, or live BP sessions. But Wednesday's going to be a bullpen, and then you're going to have, once you get to Thursday, the next 3 games if needed, then it's going to be more or less back to your starting rotation. And again, like if Nate Snead pitches on Wednesday, then obviously Xander would be piggyback with somebody else or whatever. Maybe that would be a Xander and then turns into another bullpen game. We'll see. But that's kind of what I'm expecting from a pitching stat-wise going into the weekend, strategy-wise. Things can always change. We'll see what happens. But wouldn't shock me at all if Nate Snead is who starts on Wednesday. But, of course, I'll find that out Wednesday night, and I will let you guys know on the board and on social media. Okay, let's get to Luke Lipsius. Got a lot of things to say. We go over a bunch of topics with Luke. Love his perspective as always. That is coming up next as we continue on here with the Porch, a Volquest podcast. Couldn't do without our friends over at Spivey King and Spivey LLP. You got a problem, let them find a solution for you. That's T and Trial Lawyers. They specialize in criminal defense, family law, personal injury such as DUI, homicide, assault, divorce, custody, alimony, parental right issues, car wrecks, personal accidents, all that and more. They've got 80 years of combined experience. Spivey King and Spivey LLP provides representation throughout the state and federal courts of Northeast Tennessee. The firm has a vast amount of trial experience. This practice has been in place for 43 years with this specific partnership since 2012, while also having partners who are energized and ready for today's modern legal demands. Practicing primarily in the northeast portion of Tennessee, the Tri-Cities of Sullivan County, as well as Hawkins County, Washington County, and surrounding counties. Whether you've been injured in a car accident, need help with a divorce, help with custody of your children, or have been accused of a crime, Spivey King and Spivey LLP is here to help you. Go see him in person at 142 Cherokee Street, Kingsport, Tennessee. Pick up the phone today for a free consultation by dialing 423-245-4185. Again, that is 423-245-4185, or visit them online at SpiveyKingandSpiveyLLP.com. Spivey King and Spivey LLP. You got a problem? Let them find a solution for you. TN Trial Lawyers. Luke, there's a lot of things I want to ask you about, but let's go ahead and get this out in the open. Tennessee, once again, SEC regular season champs. Thanks to Vanderbilt, actually, on the final day of the regular season, taking down Kentucky, and, of course, Tennessee sweeping South Carolina Tennessee and Kentucky finished the regular season 22-8 in conference play, and number one in the SEC. But as we know, Tennessee has the tiebreaker there, so number one in the SEC tournament. Just another date, another year to mark down on this long list of accomplishments for this program lately, and of course under Tony Vitello. Really cool stuff to see Tennessee being the SEC champions this year.
Yeah, it's so hard and such a testament to those guys that this is the second time in 3 years that they're number one, both in the SEC and overall nationally. So it's just really cool seeing this team come together and do what they did. Big shout out to Vanderbilt, because without them, then we wouldn't be saying the same things. I want to say in 2021, it came down to basically the same thing, Kentucky or Vandy, and it was, I think, Kentucky beat Vandy to give us the number one seed in the West. Of course, back then Arkansas was number one overall, but that was a big deal for us. And so I guess those two teams, they hate us when they play us, but they like us when they don't. Really cool for them going into the tournament. Especially as far as just gameplay goes. They don't have to play that early game. We get to watch some games before them. And I think it really stacks up well for them. I will say playing either Vandy or Florida for that first game of theirs, which is Florida Vandy's game 2. It's scary, but we won the series both times against them. They're both good teams, and every team in the SEC this year is going to be good. So it's just really fun, and it's really cool seeing them with that number one next to their name.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And again, I just from a whole body of work, I just kind of sat back there and was reflecting after the game on Saturday. It's like, man, the regular season's over. And I didn't play, but I was at every game, covering every game, and I'm like, it just flew by. But to see this team kind of evolve and to see questions slowly get answered and to see players step up, and it's really cool. I remember last year, man, like Christian Scott, took the job in right field. Griffin Merritt was the DH. Those things were solidified as the year went on. And of course, with your team, in 2022, I'm sure there were some questions, but you guys were just so daggum good. But 2021 as well. What do you like about this group and kind of how it came to be what it is now? It reminds me more of, honestly, it reminds me more of you guys in 22 as being, there's some questions, but pretty much this is your guys. And they got you a championship. They play every day.
Yeah, this group is really cool because not only are they, really talented, but they're also a bunch of gamers from what I've seen on TV. They don't have these big egos. They go out and play really good baseball, and they can do some crazy things because they're just that talented. And I really like watching them play, and I'm really interested to see, the tournament style of baseball is a lot different just because you tend to play more games, and especially in this tournament where you start on that Wednesday, I'm really interested to see how they manage that starter and the bullpen. That'll be kind of the last of my questions to get answered is who's going to be that, 7th, 8th guy to step up. Will it be Phillips? Will it be a younger guy? But no, as far as questions being answered, we know exactly what's going to happen. They're going to come at you with, a couple of openers and the one really good starter at Beam. That offense is going to be horrifying to other pitchers for 1 through 5. And then, the back half of the order has stepped up. Ensley with a big homer this past weekend. Those guys down at the bottom have done some good things. I think Peebles will do just fine. And then, Stark's he's been good in the 9-hole. Like he's done what
he gets on base. He gets hit. He walks. He gets on base.
He's one of the highlights of the year because, after last year, it was just like, okay, he's going to be a really good catcher. But this year he looks so confident at the plate, and I'd love to see that out of him. But it's 1 through 9. You got a really dynamic group because you really don't know who's going to beat you. Besides the top 5, they're going to do what they can. But again, you see guys just stepping up when they need to. And I think I've said this, 20 times on this podcast that guys will do what they need to do when they need to do it. And then the staff, of course, we got guys going log. Kirby's been so good. This team is they're poised to make a really deep run because you got a lot of guys on the mound with long innings. You got a lot of guys at the plate, not only with a lot of SEC at bats, but a lot of confidence going into this tournament and into the postseason.
Yeah, we'll get to all SEC here in a moment, but while we're on the tournament subject, I said earlier in the show, and I think I mentioned it on the site earlier this week, and kind of talking with some people. It's going to be a bullpen game on Wednesday, and that shocker, right? It's a midweek essentially, and I think potentially we're recording this before the Vanderbilt and Florida game. Depending on who wins that game, you might see Nate Snead actually start that Wednesday game. And then I'm sure you'll see Lloyd and Phillips and Binky and all those guys and everything. And then once you get to Thursday and then, if you play any more after that, Saturday, Sunday, or Friday, whatever it is, I think you'll see, kind of going through Stom, the Causey, and then Beam, and then Xander, and then kind of just patchworking it from there. But as a player, you guys were in the same situation in 22, and you guys had fun. You won the tournament. I mean, that was a blast and everything. Obviously, you guys were giving it your all, and this team's going to do the same. But having everything locked up in front of you, essentially. I mean, this team, all intents and purposes, is hosting a Supers if you make it. You're definitely hosting next weekend. You're SEC champions. I mean, what's the mindset for you knowing you got 2 games at least in Hoover? It'd be great to win it, but at the same sense, it's like, oh, man, I could really use a Saturday to rest a little bit before, the games that actually matter next week in regionals.
Yeah, well, the first thing I want to say is the way Snead's been throwing, he might throw every single day out there. He's if we need him, he'll be loose. But no, besides that, it's funny because if you get that bye, you want to win a little bit more than if you don't. So like you see a bunch of these teams, even us last year, you lose that first game when you don't have the bye and you do really well in the postseason.
Yeah.
But like if you're there, you might as well win it. So it's like you don't want to be stuck in that awkward, game wise where you win the first, lose the second, battle a couple of games, and then you're just burning pitching and you don't end up winning. That's kind of the worst case scenario. You want to win it all, or you want to at least make it to the championship, because that means you do have that off day right before that Sunday championship. But you go there to win, and I tell you what, that place is second to only Omaha in just atmosphere. Everybody loves baseball who goes there. The competition, everything's just highlighted. It's so fun out there, and so you winning that title is, you're winning the best conference in the whole nation. So they're going to go out there to win, but also with a grain of salt, know that I don't know, with this team it doesn't even matter. I think they could win as many as they want, lose as many as they want, whatever. They'll still be solidified. I am interested to see. Let's say we don't win it all. Kentucky does win it all. They might flip-flop us for a number 1 overall seed. I think before this last series, D1 had them as the number 1 overall seed. And as far as, actual playoffs, it doesn't really matter. You just play, the 16 seed versus the 15 in the Super. But yeah, it's going into this tournament, and I expect them to make a deep run just the way that they've been playing. Especially after that series against South Carolina. I think that's solidified in my head. Like, hey, these guys are confident and they know what they're doing going forward.
Yeah, again, at the time of this recording, I don't think we've had any updated Field of 64 projections this week. But, yeah, you're right. Kentucky was, D1 baseball. I think Baseball America as well had Kentucky 1. I think Tennessee was like 3 or something. And, again, it's just so funny. Tennessee's number 1 in the nation, SEC champions and all that. But, you look, Kentucky's good, and Kentucky's RPI is better. And Kentucky, I believe the strength of schedule is better. So, when you take into factoring the overall seeds, that's weighted a little more. It's not like Tennessee's is bad. But, if I'm a Tennessee fan, if I'm a Tennessee player, I know you don't look into this too much, but it's like, oh, not the number 1 seed? Okay, well, number 1 seed hadn't won since 99. So, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be the number 1.
Yeah. As a player at Hoover, you guys were there for 5-6 days in 22. You played in that tournament a long time. Many times. What do you guys do to pass the time? You play. You don't want to spend. I can't remember if it was you or somebody else that said you don't want to spend an awful lot of time there just because you're sitting out in the sun and baking. But what do you do to pass the time that week?
Yeah, most of the time it is spent just in the hotel room. You get your rest when you can. It all depends on the schedule. I think in 22 we played mostly later games, so we were resting up in the morning, which honestly is better because you're used to playing later games all year. So you kind of just rest up, get up for breakfast at 9 or whatever it is, then you can take your nap. But if you play those early morning games, play the game, hang out, do whatever you want, and you're always going to spend at least 1 or maybe even 2 nights at Dave & Buster's. So there's plenty of stuff to do in that mall, in that area, to pass your time. But it's funny because it's very boring. You want to just sit in your bed and watch baseball in the air conditioning, and that's what most people do. Maybe you'll have a team dinner every here and there, or go out with your parents or whatever, meet some friends. But it's really, really a boring time outside of baseball. You think of these young kids and they're just chucking it up in Hoover, but no, they're going to be resting, and they're going to be, walking around the mall every once in a while. But yeah, it's not going to be anything crazy.
Yeah, it's not like nightlife would be an option for you guys anyway because you're playing and you're there for a reason. But nightlife in Hoover's not really anything.
Yeah, I don't think they do have a nightlife. Maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I've not experienced it. So, You brought up Dave and Buster's. Of course, Andrew Seacrest did the same thing when we talked to him on Sunday. I want to get to his performance here in a moment on Saturday because it was incredible. But he said that when he was pitching a lot in the Tuesdays, him and Chuck were kind of that battery. And he said that he and Chuck would text a lot, and then Stark started catching him a little bit on Tuesdays. So they made a group chat, and Xander said they named the group chat Home Wreckers.
Home wreckers? What?
I mean, that just seems such a. I mean, a home wrecker. Charlie Taylor is not a home wrecker. I don't know. I thought it was hilarious, and it was even funnier coming from Xander. But anyway, back to the important stuff. Man, he shoved on Saturday. He looked so good, and we talked a little bit about it last week. I think like he shoved against Georgia, and you shove against Georgia, you can shove against anybody in the country. But he did that against Georgia, LSU. He did Southern Miss. He's had a couple outings this year where he's looked really good, and then he's been stable in some other ones in his roles. But here lately, he's been giving up the long ball, and he hadn't really made it out the third inning and stuff like that. But what a performance there to end the regular season, head into postseason for Xander, a guy that is going to be counted on to eat up some innings.
Yeah, and exactly what he needed just to build that confidence going into postseason. And I think we touched on it last week, how, there's ways that he can be successful. And it seemed like everything that he needed to do, he did. I think one of the most telling things is when you get a swing and a miss on, I think it was a heater by a guy like Petrie. If you're getting swings and misses from that guy, then you're doing something right. And he was landing his off speed. He was keeping them on their toes. And it was just such a good performance, not only by him, but the rest of the staff the whole weekend. Like, it was funny because there was moments where it got a little dicey and things kind of could have gone either way, but they all got out of it. And, giving up 7 runs in an SEC weekend is a big, big deal. But yeah, what Xander did was absolutely huge, especially for him and for us, getting that sweep, kind of solidifying where we need to be. And then just watching him work and do what we know he can do and the way that he can pitch.
I feel like I've asked you this at least the last couple of weeks. I'm just going to continue to reset the topic because it continues to gain validity, in my opinion. It's not your standard 1, 2, 3. It's opener here. You got beam in the middle. And seeing what Xander's done and seeing the way that at times, not here lately, but at times Marcus Phillips has grown. Andrew Binky's grown. Dylan Loy has grown. Combs is really good. We know about Snead, we know about Kirby and all that. And of course, you're getting AJ back. I think he's going to pitch on Wednesday in that bullpen game, somewhere in the middle couple of innings. I just feel like the way Frank and V have gone about assembling the pitching plan this year, albeit unorthodox, especially for them, it's just going to help Tennessee so much better in postseason play because it truly is just piecing things together. And since Tennessee's really been doing that already this year, like if you have to play a 4th game in a regional, or if you're playing on Sunday in the SEC tournament or whatever, I mean, you're, it might not be ideal situation, but you're equipped to handle that. I feel like.
100%. When you get a team of guys that is getting used to being uncomfortable, that is the best thing you can do to make a postseason run. It's where you fall into these routines, and then routines get broken in the postseason that you see people crumble, which I do not expect from those guys. People have gone anywhere from 1 to freaking 7 innings, and that's like down the board. And then like you said, we'll piece together. We might see Stamos back in another game as not an opener, something like that. But he's gonna be fine because I feel like even though you are starting in that role, that you're kind of attacking hitters, knowing that your time is limited. And so it feels more like a bullpen presence than a starter presence where you're kind of trying to ride that wave. But yeah, no, these guys are equipped to pitch wherever they're needed and do whatever they're needed to get the win.
And you're exactly right. Yeah, I'm not going to act like I'm sitting in on those team meetings, but I know the mindset of having Stom and that opener role on Friday is that he's available on Sunday if you need him, or even Saturday, really, if he pitches, 30 pitches or whatever. Like they haven't used him, but they could if they need to. So let's get to all SEC. No, let's stay on the tournament real quick. The double first base. Asked you before we recorded, you couldn't believe it. Yeah. You said that you play with a double first base in kickball games and kickball leagues or softball leagues or whatever. I get it for player safety. You remember that play with SEMO in Florida. It's to avoid that play. Mm-hmm. So I get it in that regard. Experimental just for the tournament. Some teams in the SEC have done it at points in times in non-conference games this year, but this will be the first time Tennessee's seen it. Does it change anything as a first baseman? Does it change anything for you? It's kind of weird, but Again, it's a tournament that in all cases doesn't really matter, so might as well experiment.
Yeah, I just don't like it. It's one of those things, softball does it, and I guess it's good for safety, but also if there's going to be a collision at first base, moving the base, 1 foot to the right isn't going to do all too much because collisions just happen, with the first baseman going usually backwards into the runner, where now maybe instead of hitting his body, it hits his head or something. But yeah, I mean, overall, maybe it'll be good. I think what it'll cut down on is the baseline interference, because you're going to have to stay outside of that base. If you creep inside, they're just going to call you out. And so I know that's what V and the other coaching staff are going to be preaching to the guys, that, hey, you're going to have to stay outside of this white line in order to be called safe. So is it something that's good for the game? No. Does it change much? No. I mean, if you're a first baseman, you're used to being on the inside of the bag, putting your foot there anyway. So it shouldn't change all that much as far as defensively goes. Offensively, you're going to have to take a funkier line. I don't really know how doubles work. Like, if that bag on the outside is yours, do you hit, the middle of the two or the inside? Like, how does rounding?
I read, I had it pulled up here a moment ago, but I read essentially any ball that goes to the outfield, you take the first bag, like the normal bag. So like that other bag, you don't worry. Like, as long as there's not a play at first, you take the normal bag.
Then it won't do too much. I'm interested to see how it goes. I don't think there's going to be anything crazy like runner wise as far as them trying to stay on the inside bag. I don't know. It's just weird. It's a big change. So we'll see. I know that the minor leagues talked about expanding the base just in general. So I don't know. Maybe they're going towards safety. Do I like it? Not really. Do I think it'll help? So we'll see.
We'll see what it looks like this weekend or this week over in Hoover, Alabama. Tennessee, well represented on the All-SEC team. Semo, Dylan Dreiling, first team. Kavaris Tears, Blake Burke, second team, and Burke and Tears as well. All defensive nods. I thought that was just the work both of those guys have put in. Burke was so he said it, so I'm not saying he said it first. He was just trash at first base last year, and he's gotten so much better. And Tears as well as not only right field but center field. Dean Curley, all freshman team, and then Drew Beam named the Scholar Athlete of the Year. Good showing, but the conversation is Charlie Condon, great player, probably National Player of the Year. But Christian Moore won the Triple Crown in SEC play this year. They tied for RBI, but Moore beat him in the other two in the 30 league games. I'm with you, man. I think Christian Moore should have been the Player of the Year, but you knew it wasn't going to happen because nobody was talking about it. Let's pat myself on the back here. If it wasn't for guys like us on the Tennessee beat, nobody would have been talking about Christian Moore the last week or two. It was always Charlie Condon or Jack Caglione, but Moore, great season, probably deserving a Player of the Year, but albeit a first-team nod.
Yeah, well, it sucks the most because, Condon's going to get double the hardware now, whereas Christian Moore, if we're talking SEC Player of the Year, he was the SEC Player of the Year. And, I don't know who decides this. Apparently, it's just a panel of writers. And so, of course, whoever's getting the most national attention is probably going to get the nod for SEC Player of the Year. But regardless, it's just another thing that you can hoist up. But what Semo's done this year is incredible. Hitting for average power, doing it when he needs to. It's all really good. He's definitely going to be a first rounder, even though I think in the latest projection, I didn't even see him there, which is just unbelievable because he played such good defense too. Like, that guy deserves to be Player of the Year. Sadly, he didn't get it. Maybe he's a little extra spicy in the tournament for that. But yeah, really, really good on the whole team. And it just shows how powerful that team is. 4 guys on first and second team. And then, like you said, Burke going from what he was last year to making the SEC all-defensive team is like the biggest turnaround in baseball history. But you can tell he's putting the work and he's gotten a lot better, in which, speaking selfishly for him, it raises his draft stock because it was like, hey, you can hit, but where are we going to play you? Now he's a really, really good first baseman. And it's what we need, that first baseman. People think it's like, oh, you're just there catching balls, but it gives confidence to your infielders when they know when you throw it over there, you're going to get it. Just all the routine plays. It's such a big deal that kind of gets swept under the rug of just being a solid first baseman. And then KT, I think he put a cherry on top when That guy was running around second and he threw it, whatever it was, 250 feet on a line, and they didn't end up sending him. So it's what KT's doing, absolutely awesome. I don't think anyone's really surprised by the KT now, because he's played such a solid outfield, making highlight plays and making the routine plays. So awesome for all those guys. Beam, I didn't think he was that smart. Apparently he is. So I only saw him when he was a freshman. So, no one's smart when they're a freshman. But yeah, his season, deserving so. And then, Dean, I think we all expected him to be on the freshman team. So really, really good from all those guys.
Yeah, Dean will probably be a freshman All-American here in a couple of weeks.
I bet so.
Simo and Burke, both semifinalists for the Golden Spike, so that's really cool.
Fantastic.
For Burke, I'm sure it's out there somewhere. I mean, it's not in the normal stats that I look up. I could probably ask somebody, but I'd love to see his WAR. Because you're exactly right. I mean, there's been so many plays at first where, I mean, it's part of the territory being a first baseman, but just saving his infield, just saving him from throwing errors. He's been so good in that regard. And V always talks about you. He on Monday afternoon, we were asking him about Burke and his defense, and he said that his best coach has been you, even to this day, and him and Josh have worked a lot together, but that you're playing a role into still helping him today. And so when he gets drafted next year, he should probably send you a thank you text or something.
Yeah, you'd think. I mean, I tried to develop him, and I thought it was going good, but then I guess he just forgot, and then maybe he remembered this year. So I'm glad he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's different, as you know. It's different going from role player to everyday player, for sure.
It is.
I'm still looking at this all SEC team. I'll let you go here in a second. And, it's tough. Again, it's stuff for people like us, right? But as a player and a competitor, I mean, you want to see your name on there, right? I mean, that's kind of cool. Charlie Condon, he played more third base than anything, okay? But he could have been utility, or he could have been outfield or something. But since he was nominated at third base, he, of course, gets first team third base. Second team's going to be Tommy White, and a guy like Billy Amick, who's been so good this year, kind of gets snubbed a little bit, so that's unfortunate. And then a guy like AJ Causey, where do you put him? Again, you can nominate him as a starter, because I think he made 5 starts on the year, but he's a reliever. He has 10 wins, but I'm sure he only has 1 save. Where the guys, Griffin Herring from LSU, I don't see his stats. I'm sure he's got 5-6 saves, right? AJ Causey deserves some praise, but there's not really a spot for him as well. So there can always be snubs, but again, it's just a testament to how good this team is.
Yeah, real funky for those guys. I don't think they care too much. It seems like Amick is so stone-faced all the time. I don't think he even looks at any of that. But yeah, it's going to happen. Someone's going to get snubbed like that. And like you said, it's just it's a consequence. They need to have a first team all winners, because I think Causey is tied for the lead, or the and tied for whatever in wins. And then, even Snead has 8 or 9, which is crazy out of a reliever. So yeah, those guys, they had a really good season. Sucks they don't have anything to show for it. But again, it's all noise when it really comes down to it.
All right, man. Tennessee and Hoover this week. What are you expecting? And what are some things that you want to see this team do this week? Maybe it's a pitcher throw well. Maybe it's a spot start here. What do you want to see in Hoover for this team getting ready for regional play?
I want to see these midweek guys, especially the young guys, and what they have on the stage that they're about to be introduced to. Because, we can talk about it all we want, and the older guys can say, hey, it's going to be like this, going to be like this. But until you get out there and you play in front of whatever it is, 10, 12, 15,000 people in that ballpark, it's going to be different. So we'll see who can handle it and who it might break. I also want to see Phillips do what he did, what we know he can do. I know I'm just talking about pitchers, but it's these guys that they're teetering. They're teetering where we know they can be great, and they've almost got there and they haven't gone all the way over. So I hope he takes a plunge into greatness this week.
It's like you see with Phillips, he comes on and gets the last out of a series on the road at Kentucky, such a huge moment, and then a couple of weeks ago against Queens, he just can't get out of the first inning. It's repetitions, I know, but I would love to see Marcus Phillips take that step, because he was the guy that was mentioned in preseason about dude with the nastiest stuff.
Yep.
Could be a star in the making. That was his name. All right, I always lie. This will be the last thing I want to ask you.
Okay.
Tidwell, or I think it was Tidwell or Gilbert. I can't remember which one. I think it was Tidwell gets the call up to AAA.
Tidwell, yep.
Of course, you got Beck doing his thing with the Rockies right now. Trey's continuing to do his thing. I mean, it feels like your teammates are just, I mean, some of them are in the show, some of them are on their way. And then Andre's hitting 12 home runs for the Dodgers in the minor leagues. This Vitello group that's in the minor leagues right now just continues to tear it up.
Yeah, it's a mix of the talent that he's bringing in, but also the development. Tidwell, I think he led the league in ERA this year before he got called up or something like that. I don't remember. But yeah, these guys are just dudes. And everyone expected them to make it to the next level. Now this quickly, I don't think anyone was expected that. So it's really awesome to see not only the guys that you play with do well, but then also it's right around the time where a bunch of the people you played against are also getting nods, up to AAA, up to the majors. So it's really cool seeing, the group of guys that you kind of went through college with doing what they do, especially when they used to be your teammates.
Great stuff as always from Luke Lipsius right here on the Porch, a Volquest baseball podcast presented by our friends over at Spivey King and Spivey LOP. You got a problem, let them find a solution for you. T and Trial Lawyers, a free consultation will be given by picking up the phone and dialing 423-245-4185, 423-245-4185, or visiting them online at SpiveyKingandSpiveyLOP.com. Tennessee in the SEC tournament will have full coverage for you in Hoover this week at the Hoover Met at Volquest.com and on the General Scorers. I appreciate you guys for listening and watching us, and excited to see what Tennessee does down in Hoover. I appreciate you for watching us here on the Porch. It's a Volquest baseball podcast.